Morning and welcome once again to the Quick Start course in C. We are developing a game of Tic Tac Toe, and in doing so we are trying to learn the functionalities of C language. Today we are going to discuss about functions. Now if you remember, we talked about the logic that we will be using to develop a Tic Tac Toe game, and I'm just trying to again sort of discuss the logic that we have discussed before. We start by asking the name of the players, initializing the board, and then displaying the tic-tac-toe board. Then we ask the name of player 1 for the move, we input a move, display the board, find out if player 1 has won. Then we do the same things for player 2, and we keep on repeating steps from 2 to 9 till someone wins the game. And if no one wins the game and all the moves are exhausted, then of course it is a draw. So we have developed the logic, we have written the code for asking the names of the players, we have written the code for initializing the board, we have developed the code for displaying the board as well. Now if we go on writing code in a linear fashion, then there is one thing that you will notice, that display board comes here at this step as well, and display board comes here again. So we'll have to write the logic for displaying the board again and again. And in order to avoid doing that, what we use is something called functions. And furthermore, if you look at the program deeply, you will see that a lot of things are recurring again and again. For example, input a move, it happens here, and input a move happens here. Also, has a certain player won the game or not, it happens here, it happens here. So there are certain sections or certain parts of the program that get repeated again and again. So in order to avoid writing the same code again and again, what we try to do is that we write that code once and we name that part of the code, and that naming of the part of that code is called a function. Let me show you how it is so it is more clear. For example, I have put all the code that I use for displaying the board within something called board display. So now this section of the code, or this piece of code, has a name. It has a name called board display. And in addition to the name, there are two things over here as well, void and void. Both of them are void. Now this part which comes after the name of the function is the input parameters, and we are going to talk about input parameters later. Right now in this function there are no input parameters. We don't need any input parameters in this part of the function, and the return value is also void. We don't need any, or we are not returning any value from this function. We will discuss about the return values and the input values in the next slides as well. But right now what I am trying to explain to you is that this piece of code which is repeated again and again, we can have this piece of code within a function, and we can have a name for the function. Now how are we going to use this? It's going to look something like this. An additional line is going to come here, void board display void, and a semicolon, so there is nothing really happening over here. This is the same main program, but instead of having the whole code here, we are just removing the whole code and replacing it by board display. And the implementation of board display is after the main, the brace of the main. This is the opening brace and this is closing brace of the main program. This ends, so the main function has ended and a new function, void board display, begins here. This is the declaration. What is the declaration? A declaration is just telling the compiler or the tools that will compile the program that if you encounter something called board display, you don't get confused. Board display is implemented, and if you go below the main, or if you go to all the parts of the program, the sections of the program, you will find an implementation of board display. And if you don't put this board display over here, the compiler will get confused and it says that this is an undeclared function or undefined function, because it moves in a linear fashion from top to bottom, and up till this point it has not encountered board display. It's only after here that it will discover. At this point, if you don't have a declaration, at this point the compiler will give you a warning saying that it has not been able to find the board display function. This is how we use it. We don't put void over here. We just, now since there is no parameters to be passed, there is nothing between this round brackets. Then we have the actual code over here. I have not shown the code, but of course we have to put the code over here. This is called the definition of the function, or also the implementation of the function. Okay, so you can now make a function for board init and remove the code from the main function and put all that board init code in a different function. Call that board init code from the main function. Board init is called only once in the program, but you can also make the code that is called once into a function, because that will make your code more modular and more readable. This is a good programming practice. It gives you a more modular approach or a more modular program. Thank you.